So now we will tackle about the reproductive system. Now we were going to talk about the male reproductive system. Now the male reproductive system. It produces, it stores, nourishes, and transports functional gametes, reproductive cells. These gametes are sperm. In this video, we will talk about the male reproductive system, and let us first begin by learning some major male reproductive organs, anatomies, and structures. To do so, let us cut a sagittal plane of this gentleman here and look at what productive organs and structures we can find. But before that, let us first start with the non-reproductive organs just to see where in respect to the male body. I draw on the left, so this here would be the anus, where food from the gastrointestinal tract come down to bringing poo. Essentially, behind this we would find the bottom part of the spine, not the spinal cord. That was a mistake. A ventral to the anus tract, we can find the urinary bladder here, which most of us will know will connect all the way to the penis, forming the whole. The urinary bladder stores urine, which travels via the ureter from the kidneys. So from the kidneys, urine will come to the urinary bladder via the ureter and then out through the penis if it has to during excretion. So here of course we have the penis. The penis is made of muscle, and that's why if people have an erection, this muscle tighten up and contract, increases blood flow, causing the penis to be erected around the most ventral part of our body. Pubic symphysis, which is basically cartilage connecting our hip bones together in the front, if that makes me sense. So those are sort of the non-male reproductive structures, except the penis, of course, the most important reproductive structure of the male. I would say is the testes, which actually produces our sperm, surrounding and protecting the testes the scrotum skin that acts as a barrier, so sperm is produced by the testes. Sperm can then travel out from the testes and can be stored in the epididymis. During ejaculation, sperm will then travel out from the epididymis through the long ductus deferens. Here, the ductus deferens will continue on and will end basically at the ampulla of the ductus deferens and the seminal glands. Now the seminal glands produces the semen, the fluid that actually mixes with the sperm. So now sperm and semen are mixed up and will travel through the prostate gland and out through the penis. So the sperm pathway, remember, starts from the testes. It comes up through the ductus deferens, mixes with semen produces by the seminal glands, and then it will move out through the prostate gland, through the urethra of the penis, and out through the external urethral or face. Now, as you can see, urine and semen both travel through the urethra and out of the same hole of the penis, but both cannot happen stimulously unless of course there's some biological so for example, when you pee, the ejaculatory duct will close, and vice versa. When you ejaculate, your urine bladder, when you sphincter will close. Lastly, the structure I'd like to talk about it what's called the bull beautiful gland, which actually won't talk about. I'll just mention it and we'll soon find out its function later on. So sperm is the reproductive cell, the gametes of male, and they are produced by the testes. So let's learn a bit more about the testes. Here is the scrotal cavity, and surrounding it there is the scrotum that protects the testes. The inside within the testes we have many tubules organized brilliantly here Tubules are called the seminiferous tubules, and it's within these seminiferous tubules of where sperm is synthesized. Here we have a lobule of seminiferous tubules, and between each of these organized tubules we have the septa which separates them. The seminiferous tubules connects to the testes and then to the epididymis. The epididymis consists of a head region, body region, and the tail region. Down here, the epididymis, remember, stores the sperm produced by the scimitar first tubules. Now, the tail of the epididymis will connect to the ductus deferens, or properly known as the ductus vas deferens. There is, of course, blood supplying the testes. So from all this, we can see that sperm is synthesized here in the seminal first tubules, and then they go here to the epididymis where it gets stored. Then if ejaculation happens or will happen, the sperm will travel through the ductus deferens and through the urethra of the penis and out. So we learned a bit about the testes. The sperm synthesized in a seminar series. So let's cut a cross section of this tubule, and I have a look at its structure and what it looks like inside the scimitar of his tribute surround. Semen of first tubules, we have the basement membrane and fibroblasts around. The seminiferous tubules, we have the interstitial space where interstitial cells reside. In these interstitial cells are also known as Leydig cells, and these cells are the cells that produce the male hormones such as testosterone. We also have capillaries here that supply blood to the seminiferous tubules. Within the seminiferous tubules, we have special cells hereby. The way here is the lumen of the seminiferous tubules like a gap, a hole. Anyway, back to these cells. These cells are known as Nars cells, but they're also called sterily cells. So these Nars cells, these Sertoli cells actually help in sperm cell synthesis. Basically, sperm synthesis begins from cells called sperm stem cells on the outermost layer of the seminiferous tubules here, and these sperm stem cells will then proceed towards the lumen of the seminiferous tubules where they will essentially become sperm with the tail as we call know it. The sperm stem cells proceed towards the lumen of the seminiferous tubules by dividing via mitosis and then via meiosis and then meiosis again. So sperm will then end up at the lumen of the seminiferous tubules. The sperm is actually properly referred to as a spermatozoa. This is just to describe what stage of sperm synthesis it's at. The spermatozoa in the seminar for subio is actually well immature. It can't wiggle its tail properly basically. So what happens is these outermost sperm stem cells become permetes OA as it proceed to the lumen of the seminiferous tubule. From the lumen of the seminiferous tubule, this immature spermatozoa will then travel towards the epididymis where it will mature, stored ready for release during ejaculation. So let's take a section of the seminiferous tubules, air including the lumen, to have a general picture of sperm synthesis. Remember, we are only going to look at the general explanation. It will not go into that much detail. So here we have the lumen of the seminiferous tubule, and here we have the fibroblasts and the basement membrane, the interstitial cells, the Leydig cells that produce testosterone and androgen, and have blood cells that supply the testes with blood. And here most importantly, the outermost layer of the seminiferous tubule, we have sperm stem cells. These cells are known as spermatogonia and they begin sperm synthesis. Essentially, the first part of sperm synthesis is called spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis is basically when you have the spermatogonia divide to replicate itself, a process known as mitosis. So the spermatogonia via mitosis will form daughter cells. These daughter cells are known as the primary spermatocyte. Now, these spermatocytes are pretty important because they are what begin meiosis, which is a special form of cell division to produce male gametes, in this case sperm. So meiosis actually occur first of all. The primary spermatocyte will produce secondary spermatocytes via meiosis. So here we have one permis spermatocyte making two secondary spermatocytes. Then a second meiosis occurs when the secondary spermatocytes will form spermatids. In this example I'm drawing, we have one sperm at one secondary spermatocyte forming two spermatids respectively. So if you got confused, there we had two meiosis occurring, one from the primers of spermatocyte to spermatocytes, and in the second meiosis from the secondary spermatocytes. It is fermented. Now once the spermatids are formed, this actually completes the spermatogenesis process. But after spermatogenesis, you have another process called sperm oogenesis that essentially allows spermatids to develop and become a mature spermatozoa in the lumen. The immature spermatozoa which are in the lumen can then travel to the epididymis for maturation and storage, ready for release. I forgot to mention another type of cell known as nerve cells which help in sperm synthesis. It particularly supports spermatogenesis. These nerve cells are also known as Sertoli cells. So I hope sperm synthesis made some sense. If it didn't, I will hopefully make a video on sperm synthesis. So now that we know some anatomy and physiology of sperm synthesis, let's look at all this in a bigger picture. So looking at the male reproductive organs, so here is the penis and the urethra. Here will join to the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder up here stores urine, and the ureter will connect the urinary bladder to the kidneys. So the ureter will actually bring urine to the urinary bladder for storage. The tube that connect the urinary bladder to the outside of the body is known as the urethra. Here, now let's look at the main male reproductive structure. So here we have the testes. Let's take a closer look at the testes. Here again we have the seminiferous tubules of the testes, and they actually produce spermatozoa. Remember, the immature spermatozoa again is just sperm, the reproductive cell of the male. The gamete, the immature spermatozoa will then move towards the epididymis here, which will store and protect the spermatozoa. It also supports its maturation, and it is also a recycling center for damaged spermatozoa. So spermatozoa, the sperm is stored here in the epididymis, and when ejaculation occurs, this spermatozoa, which is not mature will move along the ductus deferens. Ductus vas deferens. The vas deferens begins at the tail of the epididymis. It also can contract to support spermatozoa movement and transport to the penis, the urethra. It also can support as metazoa for a short duration, so it can be used for storage for commented spermatozoa for a short duration. And so when ejaculation happens, the mature spermatozoa, they will move along the ductus vas deferens and will connect to the urethra tube. Now let's look at the accessory glands of the male reproductive system. The sperm that comes from the epididymis or vas deferens during ejaculation will join with another tube forming the ejaculatory duct. The sperm will mix with a fluid begins secreted by the structure here called the seminal glands. The seminal glands will secrete what's called the seminal fluid that will make up 60% of the semen volume. It will contain things to support sperm. It contains fructose for energy, prostaglandins to support sperm movements, as well as fibrinogens. So what is the semen? Well, semen is essentially fluid that contains things sports to support sperm traveling during ejaculation. So the sperm, remember, is the reproductive cell, and the semen is the fluid that the sperm travels during ejaculation. The sperm other accessory organ is the prostate gland, where the semen sperm will pass through as well. The prostate gland is a muscular organ that produces prostate fluid that actually make up 30% of the semen volume. So the prostate gland will also secrete fluid containing things making up semen. The final accessory organ is the bubble urethral gland that secrete a thick clean mucus. This thick alkaline mucus actually will help neutralize any urinary acids in the urethra, and this is an order that the semen, when it travels during ejaculation, can travel through the urethra in a non-acidic environment. So, during ejaculation, sperm will move here through the epididymis vas deferens out through the urethra and shoot out like so, and this is semen. The typical ejaculation release about 2 to 5 million milliliters of semen. Semen, remember, will contain seminal fluids, prostate fluid, as well as some bubble urethral fluid, as well as enzymes to support the sperm, and of course it will contain sperm. So semen contains sperm. The male reproductive cell, each ejaculation actually releases about 20 to 100 million sperm cells, which is a lot. And so during sexual intercourse without the use of a condom, one of these sperm cells will hopefully fuse with the female reproductive cell along the fallopian tube ills, but that's for another story. So I hope you understand a bit for about the male reproductive organ. So I hope you'll understand.